I returned to Pennsylvania after 3 years of caring for Dad at a memory care facility in Florida, finally ready to see Mom and help her settle into her golden years. But when my video call connected that Sunday morning, I didn't see the cheerful kitchen I remembered. Instead, my 83-year-old mother sat on a fold-out chair in what looked like a dim garage, wearing a stained bathrobe, her silver hair unwashed and tangled. Behind her, I could see my childhood home through a window, the warm lights, the Christmas tree I'd helped her decorate decades ago. But she wasn't inside. She was locked out of her own house. My name is Margaret Walsh, and this is the story of how I discovered my brother had stolen everything from our mother. Before I tell you what happened next, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop your location in the comments. I'm curious if you're having your morning coffee or winding down after a long day. 3 years earlier, Dad's Alzheimer's had progressed so rapidly that someone needed to be with him full-time. As a retired nurse, I volunteered to move to Florida to manage his care at Sunset Gardens Memory Care. It was the hardest 3 years of my life, watching the man who taught me to ride a bike slowly forget my name. When he passed in October, I felt both grief and relief. Grief for losing him, relief that his suffering had ended. My brother Rob stayed in Oakville with Mom. We'd agreed he'd check on her daily since he only lived 10 minutes away. Mom was still sharp at 80, managing her small house on Maple Street, tending her rose garden, playing bridge with her friends at the senior center. She'd been a school teacher for 40 years, respected throughout our small Pennsylvania town. The house was modest but paid off, and Dad's pension plus Social Security kept her comfortable. "Don't worry about me, Maggie," she'd say during our weekly calls. "Rob and Cheryl visit all the time. I'm fine. You just take care of your father." I'd planned to video call Mom that December Sunday to discuss my return home. I'd booked a flight for January 2nd and couldn't wait to finally see her in person after our 3-year separation. At 62, I was ready to settle back into Oakville, maybe volunteer at the hospital, spend quality time with Mom while she was still healthy. The call connected at 1:00 a.m., sharp. But instead of Mom's familiar kitchen with the yellow curtains and the ceramic rooster collection she'd been building since the 1970 seconds, my screen showed something that made my heart stop. Mom sat on a cheap folding chair in what was clearly a garage. Behind her, I could see Dad's old workbench covered in dust, cardboard boxes stacked against concrete walls, a water heater, garden tools hanging on hooks. She wore a faded pink bathrobe I didn't recognize, far too thin for December weather. Her hair, always so carefully styled, hung in greasy strands around her face. She'd lost weight, maybe 20 pounds, her cheekbones sharp and prominent. "Mom," I said, my voice cracking. "Where are you? Why are you in the garage?" She looked at the camera with confusion in her roomy blue eyes. "Margaret, is that you, honey?" "Yes, Mom, it's me. Why aren't you in the house?" She glanced around as if seeing her surroundings for the first time. Rob said I should stay out here. Less to clean, he said. The house is. They're using the house." My stomach dropped. "Who's using the house, Mom?" "Rob and Cheryl, and the grandchildren. They moved in to help me." She smiled, but it was uncertain, confused. "Didn't they tell you?" Through the garage window behind her, I could see into what used to be our family room. A massive flat-screen TV I'd never seen before. New furniture. Cheryl walked past carrying a coffee mug, laughing at something on her phone. "Mom, how long have you been sleeping in the garage?" She picked at the hem of her bathrobe. "I don't. Time is funny, Margaret. Is it winter? I can't remember." She started crying softly. "I'm cold all the time." I felt rage building in my chest like nothing I'd experienced since watching Dad deteriorate. "Mom, listen to me carefully. I'm coming home. I'll be there in 2 days. Don't tell Rob we talked. Can you do that for me?" She nodded, wiping her eyes with a shaking hand. "Okay, honey. I won't tell." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He gets angry when I bother him." After we hung up, I sat staring at my phone screen, replaying what I'd seen. My mother, a woman who'd taught third grade for 4 decades, who'd raised 2 children, who'd cared for my father through cancer, and then Alzheimer's reduced to living in her own garage like unwanted storage. I booked the next flight to Pittsburgh. 48 hours. Rob and Cheryl had 48 hours before I showed up on that doorstep, and they had no idea what was coming. I landed at Pittsburgh International at 6:30 p.m. On Tuesday, rented a car, and drove the 90 minutes to Oakville in a fog of fury and fear. What else had they done to her? How long had this been going on? Why hadn't any of Mom's friends called me? The house on Maple Street looked exactly as I remembered from the outside. The same white shutters Dad had painted 5 years ago. The same oak tree in the front yard where Rob and I used to climb as kids. But everything felt wrong, corrupted somehow. I parked across the street at 8 p.m., watching through the large front window as Rob, Cheryl, and their 2 teenage sons ate dinner in Mom's dining room. I recognized Mom's good china the set Grandma had given her, only used for Thanksgiving and Christmas. They were eating off it like it was nothing special. I walked up the driveway toward the side door that led to the garage. Through the window, I could see a small camping cot in the corner with a threadbare blanket, a space heater that looked ancient and potentially dangerous. No bathroom access. She'd have to come into the house to use facilities. The side door was unlocked. I stepped into the garage, and the cold hit me immediately. It couldn't have been more than 45 degrees. Mom sat on her cot, wrapped in that thin bathrobe and the blanket, reading a large print library book by the light of a single bulb. "Mom," I said softly. She looked up, and for a moment, confusion crossed her face. Then recognition dawned, and tears spilled down her cheeks. "Margaret, you're really here?" I crossed the garage and pulled her into my arms. She felt so small, so fragile. She smelled unwashed, and I could feel her ribs through the bathrobe. "I'm here, Mom. I'm here, and I'm not leaving." We sat together on that cot while she told me everything in fragments, some parts clear, others confused by what I now suspected was advancing dementia. Rob had convinced her to let them help by moving in after Dad's death. They'd said she couldn't manage alone. At first, it seemed fine, but gradually, they'd taken over. Her bedroom became their master suite. She moved to the guest room. Then they said she was disruptive to the teenagers' sleep schedule and suggested the garage apartment, except there was no apartment, just a garage with a cot. "They bring me food," she said, trying to defend them. "Leftovers usually. Cheryl says I don't need much at my age." I looked at the corner where a mini fridge hummed. Inside were containers of wilted salad and dried-out chicken, a gallon of milk that had expired 3 days ago. "What about your friends? Martha and Susan from Bridge Club?" Mom's face crumpled. "Rob said they were bad influences, that they were trying to take advantage of me. He said I shouldn't answer when they call." "Mom, where's your phone?" She pointed to the workbench. I found her old flip phone, dead battery, covered in dust. When I plugged it in, it showed 47 missed calls from various numbers. I recognized her bridge partners, her hairdresser, the senior center. I heard footsteps, and the door from the house burst open. Rob stood there, his face red with anger and surprise. At 58, my little brother had gained weight, his gut hanging over his belt. He wore an expensive-looking sweater I knew Mom couldn't have afforded to buy him. "What the hell are you doing here?" he demanded. I stood slowly, placing myself between him and Mom. "I could ask you the same thing, Rob. Why is our mother living in the garage?" "She's not living in the garage. She's staying here temporarily while we renovate her bathroom. It's safer this way." "Safer?" I gestured around the freezing space. "It's 45 degrees in here. There's no bathroom access. She's sleeping on a camping cot." Cheryl appeared behind Rob, arms crossed. She'd always been calculating, but I'd never seen her as cruel until now. "Your mother is confused, Margaret. She wanders at night. She's becoming a danger to herself and the boys." "So you locked her out of her own house?" "It's our house now," Rob said, his voice cold. "Mom signed it over to us 6 months ago. She can't manage a property at her age. We're doing her a favor." The words hit like a physical blow. She signed over the house, along with power of attorney. She wanted us to take care of everything. He pulled out his phone, scrolling. I have all the paperwork, legal and binding. I looked at Mom, who was staring at her hands, confused. I don't remember signing anything, Margaret, but Rob says I did. My mind raced. 6 months ago would have been June, right after Dad's death. Mom would have been grieving, vulnerable. I want to see that paperwork. Every single document. Rob's eyes narrowed. You don't have any right to it. You abandoned Mom to go play nurse in Florida. I was caring for our father while he died of Alzheimer's. Something you couldn't be bothered to help with. Dad had good insurance. He was fine where he was. Rob stepped closer, trying to intimidate me. You need to leave, Maggie. Mom is under our care now. If you keep making trouble, we'll get a restraining order. We'll say you're upsetting her, making her dementia worse. I felt my hands clench into fists, but I forced myself to stay calm. I'm not going anywhere. I'm taking Mom with me tonight. Like hell you are. Rob blocked the doorway. You try to take her, I'll call the police and report you for elder kidnapping. We stood there, in a silent standoff for several long seconds. Then Mom's quiet voice broke through. Please don't fight. I'm fine, Margaret. I don't want to cause problems. That broke my heart more than anything else. My mother, who'd never backed down from protecting her students or her family, now too beaten down to stand up for herself. I pulled out my phone. Fine. Mom will stay here tonight, but I'm staying too, in this garage. If she's comfortable enough for an 83-year-old woman, it's comfortable enough for me. Rob's face went purple. You can't. Try to stop me. I kept my voice level. Call the police if you want. I'd love to explain to them why my mother is living in a garage in December while you're sleeping in her bedroom. He and Cheryl exchanged glances. Finally, Cheryl grabbed his arm. Let her stay. We'll deal with this tomorrow. They retreated into the house, slamming the door. I heard the lock click. That night, I lay on that uncomfortable cot with Mom, both of us wrapped in blankets I'd grabbed from my car. The space heater hummed dangerously. Through the window, I could see Rob and Cheryl in what used to be my parents' bedroom, watching a movie on a television that probably cost more than Mom's monthly Social Security check. I'm sorry, Margaret, Mom whispered in the dark. I'm such a burden. You're not a burden, Mom. You're being abused. But I promise you, we're going to fix this. First thing Wednesday morning, I drove to Oakville Family Medicine and demanded to see Dr. Rodriguez, Mom's physician for the past 20 years. His nurse tried to turn me away, patient confidentiality, but I planted myself in the waiting room and refused to move until he agreed to speak with me. Dr. Rodriguez was in his 60s, a kind man with worried eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. When I explained what I'd found, his face went pale. Margaret, I've been trying to reach your mother for 8 months. She missed her last 3 appointments. When I finally got through to the house, Rob said she'd decided to switch doctors. He pulled up Mom's records on his computer. Your mother was diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's in March, right after your father passed. I prescribed medication and recommended regular monitoring. I also strongly advised that any major decisions be postponed until we could assess her cognitive function more thoroughly. My hands trembled. March. They had her sign over the house in June. If she signed property transfer documents, it would have been while her judgment was significantly impaired. He printed out her medical chart. Margaret, these records show she was in no condition to make legal decisions. She couldn't remember why she'd come to appointments. She got lost driving to the grocery store 3 times in 1 month. Will you testify to that if needed? He didn't hesitate. Absolutely. What's been done to Dorothy is medical fraud, possibly elder exploitation. Next stop, Oakville Police Department. But when I tried to file a report, the officer at the desk barely looked up from his computer. Ma'am, this sounds like a family dispute. If your mother signed legal documents, that's a civil matter. You'll need a lawyer. She's living in a garage in December. That's not a family dispute, that's elder abuse. Did she ask to be removed from the property? I hesitated. No, but then there's nothing we can do. Adults are allowed to make their own living arrangements, even if family members disagree with those choices. I wanted to scream. Instead, I walked out and called every attorney in the phone book until I found one who specialized in elder law. Patricia Chen's office was in a converted house on Oak Street, modest but professional. She was perhaps 50, with short black hair and sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. I spread Mom's medical records across her desk and told her everything. Patricia listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. Margaret, what your brother has done isn't just morally wrong, it's legally actionable. Your mother signed away her house while suffering from diagnosed Alzheimer's disease. Any contract signed by someone lacking mental capacity is void. Hope flared in my chest. Can we get the house back? Not just the house. We're going to get everything. Bank accounts, possessions, and we're going to make sure Rob and Cheryl face consequences. She tapped her pen against the legal pad. But you need to be prepared. This will get ugly. Your brother will fight back, and he'll fight dirty. I don't care. My mother is sleeping in a garage. Patricia smiled, and it reminded me of a wolf. Then let's go hunting. First thing tomorrow morning, we're going to serve your brother with a lawsuit and an emergency petition to invalidate all documents. We'll also file for immediate guardianship to protect your mother from further exploitation. That night, I didn't return to the garage. Instead, I checked Mom and myself into the Oakville Inn. When Rob realized we'd left, he called my phone 14 times. I didn't answer. Let him panic. Mom sat on the hotel bed, wrapped in a clean robe I'd bought at Walmart, her hair freshly washed for the first time in who knows how long. She looked more like herself, though confusion still clouded her eyes. Margaret, did I really sign away my house? You did, Mom. But you weren't well. Rob and Cheryl took advantage of that. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I trusted him. He's my son. I know, Mom. And he betrayed that trust. But we're gonna fix it. Friday morning, Patricia and I arrived at the house on Maple Street at 9 a.m. A process server stood behind us, documents in hand. I rang the doorbell. Cheryl answered, still in her bathrobe. Her face went from annoyed to alarmed when she saw Patricia's professional attire and the process server. What's this? Legal documents, Patricia said crisply. Where's Robert Walsh? Rob appeared, coffee mug in hand. When he saw us, his face darkened. I told you to stay away, Maggie. The process server stepped forward. Robert Walsh? You've been served. He handed over a thick manila envelope. Rob tore it open, his eyes scanning the pages. I watched the color drain from his face. You're suing me? Your own brother? You stole from our mother, I said quietly. What did you expect? I didn't steal anything. She gave it to me. Patricia's voice cut through his bluster like ice. Mr. Walsh, your mother signed those documents while suffering from diagnosed Alzheimer's disease. Dr. Samuel Rodriguez has provided medical testimony that she lacked the mental capacity to understand what she was signing. That makes every document she signed under your influence legally void. This is ridiculous. Mom's fine. A little forgetful, but fine. A little forgetful? I couldn't contain my anger anymore. She was living in the garage, Rob. The garage. In December. She'd lost 20 pounds because you were feeding her scraps. Cheryl grabbed the documents from Rob's hands, reading frantically. You can't do this. We've invested money into this house. We sold our condo to move here. You sold your condo because you were being foreclosed on, Patricia said calmly. I blinked. I hadn't known that. Patricia continued. I've done my research, Mrs. Walsh. You and Robert were facing bankruptcy. Stealing Dorothy's house wasn't charity, it was survival for you. Rob's face turned red. Get off my property. It's not your property, Mr. Walsh. Not legally. Not anymore. Patricia smiled. You have 72 hours to vacate the premises, and return all assets to Dorothy Walsh, including bank accounts, jewelry, and any other items of value. If you refuse, we'll pursue criminal charges for elder exploitation, fraud, and financial abuse. You'll never prove she wasn't competent, Rob snarled. Actually, we already have. Dr. Rodriguez's testimony, combined with medical records showing her Alzheimer's diagnosis 3 months before she signed your documents, makes this an open and shut case. Patricia pulled out another folder. We also have testimony from Martha Jensen and Susan Park, your mother's bridge partners, who you isolated her from stating that Dorothy was clearly confused and disoriented when they last saw her in June, right around the time you had her sign everything over to you. I watched my brother's face cycle through emotions, rage, panic, calculation. Finally, he settled on one last, desperate attack. If you push this, I'll have Mom declared incompetent and committed. If she's too sick to have signed those documents, she's too sick to live independently. I'll make sure she ends up in the worst nursing home in the state, and you'll never see her again. The threat hung in the air like poison. For a moment, doubt crept in. What if he was right? What if fighting this meant Mom got hurt worse? Then I remembered her sitting on that cot in the freezing garage, apologizing for being a burden. Try it, I said softly. Please try it, Rob, because then every news station in Pennsylvania will hear about how you threatened to institutionalize your mother for reporting your theft, how you isolated an 83-year-old Alzheimer's patient and made her sleep in a garage while you lived in her house. Patricia pulled out her phone. I have Channel 7 News on speed dial. They love stories about elder abuse, especially in small towns where everyone knows everyone. Rob's bluster deflated. He knew he was beaten, at least for now, but his eyes promised that this war was far from over. Get off my porch, he said through gritted teeth. As we walked back to Patricia's car, I heard him inside the house, screaming at Cheryl. Good. Let them panic. What happens now? I asked Patricia. Now we wait. They have 3 days to respond. They'll probably lawyer up and fight it. But Margaret? She turned to look at me, her expression serious. Be prepared for them to get nasty. People don't give up $100,000 houses without a fight. She had no idea how right she was. The first attack came that night. I was back at the hotel with Mom, watching old episodes of Murder she wrote her favorite show when my phone rang. An unknown number. Is this Margaret Walsh? Yes. Who's calling? This is Pennsylvania Adult Protective Services. We've received a concerning report about Dorothy Walsh. We need to schedule an immediate welfare check. My stomach sank. A report from whom? The reporter wished to remain anonymous. They claim you've removed Mrs. Walsh from her home against her will and may be financially exploiting her. Rob. It had to be Rob. That's a lie. I'm protecting my mother from my brother, who was keeping her in a garage. Ma'am, we have to investigate every report. We'll need to interview Mrs. Walsh tomorrow at 10 a.m. at our offices. If she doesn't appear, we'll have to involve law enforcement. They hung up before I could argue. I looked at Mom, who'd fallen asleep in her chair, her face peaceful for the first time in days. Now I'd have to wake her early, take her to be interrogated by social workers who'd been fed lies by Rob. I called Patricia, who listened patiently to my panic. This is standard retaliation. They're trying to paint you as the bad guy. But we have medical records, witness testimony, and photos of that garage. Let them investigate. They'll see the truth. The next morning, I dressed Mom in clothes I'd bought at Walmart, nice slacks and a soft blue sweater that brought out her eyes. We arrived at the Adult Protective Services office 15 minutes early. The investigator, a tired-looking woman named Sandra Miller, interviewed us separately. When it was my turn, she didn't waste time with pleasantries. Your brother claims you coerced your mother into leaving her care situation and are now isolating her to gain control of her assets. I pulled out my phone and showed her the video I'd recorded of the garage, the camping cot, the mini fridge with expired food, the single space heater, the temperature reading of 43 degrees. This is where my 83-year-old mother with Alzheimer's was living while my brother and his family occupied her house. Sandra's professional mask slipped for just a moment, showing disgust. Your brother claimed this was temporary while they renovated. For 6 months? In December? I slid Dr. Rodriguez's records across the table. Here's proof that Mom has Alzheimer's and was incompetent to sign away her property. My brother exploited her illness for financial gain. 2 hours later, Sandra called us both back in. Mrs. Walsh, do you want to be with your daughter? Mom looked at me with clear eyes. Yes, Margaret takes care of me. Do you feel safe with her? Yes, very safe. Sandra closed her folder. Miss Walsh, we're closing this investigation. No evidence of exploitation on your part, however. She paused. I'm also opening an investigation into your brother's treatment of your mother. What you've shown me constitutes clear elder abuse. I could have cried with relief, but Rob wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Monday morning, Patricia called with news that made my blood run cold. Margaret, your brother has filed an emergency petition to have your mother declared incompetent and himself appointed as her legal guardian. The hearing is tomorrow at 2 p.m. Can he do that? He's arguing that if she wasn't competent to sign over the house, she's not competent to choose where to live or who cares for her. It's a scorched earth tactic. If he can't have the house, he'll control Dorothy herself. The hearing the next day was held in Judge Martha Henderson's courtroom. Rob and Cheryl sat with their lawyer, a slick-looking man named Gerald Spencer, who probably cost more than they could afford. I sat with Patricia and Mom, who kept whispering, "Where are we? What's happening?" Spencer stood first. Your Honor, Dorothy Walsh is clearly incompetent, as demonstrated by her own daughter's legal filings. She cannot manage her affairs, cannot make sound decisions, and requires full-time supervision. My client, as her only son willing to provide care. Willing? I couldn't help myself. He kept her in a garage. Judge Henderson's gavel cracked. Miss Walsh, you'll have your turn. But her eyes were sharp with interest. Spencer continued, presenting a picture of Mom as helplessly confused, unable to function. He argued that I was unstable, having abandoned my family to care for Dad in Florida, that I had no permanent residence in Pennsylvania, no means to support Mom long-term. Then Patricia stood, and I watched her dismantle their case piece by piece. Your Honor, Robert Walsh claims to care about his mother's welfare, yet here are photographs showing where he kept her a garage with temperatures below 45 degrees, no bathroom access, expired food. She displayed them on a screen. Here are medical records showing Dorothy Walsh was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in March, but received no treatment because Mr. Walsh prevented her from seeing her doctor. Here is testimony from neighbors who witnessed Dorothy wearing inadequate clothing in winter, who heard Mr. Walsh yelling at her. She paused, letting it sink in. Mr. Walsh doesn't want guardianship to help his mother. He wants it to maintain control over her assets and silence anyone who questions his exploitation. Spencer tried to object, but Judge Henderson silenced him. I want to hear from Mrs. Walsh herself. Patricia helped Mom to the witness stand. She looked small and frightened, but when the judge asked gently, Dorothy, who do you want to take care of you? Mom's answer was clear. My daughter Margaret. She's always taken care of our family. Judge Henderson's ruling was swift. Petition denied. Dorothy Walsh will remain under Margaret Walsh's care. Furthermore, I'm ordering an immediate freeze on all of Dorothy's assets pending resolution of the property dispute. She looked at Rob with barely concealed disgust. Mr. Walsh, if I hear you've contacted your mother without supervision, I'll hold you in contempt. Court adjourned. Rob stood so fast his chair fell over. This is bullshit. You're all against me because I'm a man. This is discrimination. Mr. Walsh, one more outburst, and you'll be removed from my courthouse in handcuffs. As we left, Rob shoved past us in the hallway. You'll regret this, Maggie. I promise you that. Cheryl was crying. We have nowhere to go. You're making us homeless. Patricia didn't even glance at them. You have 72 hours to vacate Dorothy's property. I suggest you start packing. 3 days later, Patricia, Mom, and I stood on the front porch of the house on Maple Street as a locksmith changed every lock. Rob and Cheryl had cleared out, taking items that didn't belong to them. I'd deal with that later. For now, I just wanted Mom home. When we walked through the front door, Mom stopped, looking around with wonder. "This is my house," I remember now. The next 2 months were a blur of legal proceedings, cleaning, and recovery. Patricia filed criminal charges against Rob and Cheryl for elder exploitation and fraud. The district attorney took one look at the evidence and agreed to prosecute. Dr. Rodriguez adjusted Mom's Alzheimer's medication and set up regular monitoring. With proper care, decent food, and the stress removed, Mom improved dramatically. The confusion cleared somewhat. She'd never be fully herself again, but she was present, comfortable, safe. Rob and Cheryl's trial came in February. I sat in that courtroom and watched witness after witness testify. Martha and Susan from Bridge Club, describing how Rob had isolated Dorothy. Dr. Rodriguez, explaining the medical fraud. Patricia presented photos of the garage, bank records showing Rob had drained $47,000 from Mom's accounts, receipts for luxury items purchased with her money. The jury deliberated for 3 hours, guilty on all counts. Judge Henderson showed no mercy. "Mr. Walsh, you exploited your own mother's illness for financial gain. You kept her in conditions unfit for animals. This court sentences you to 5 years in state prison, followed by 10 years probation. You are ordered to pay restitution of $175,000, including the value of the house, stolen funds, and damages. You will have no contact with Dorothy Walsh for the rest of her natural life." Cheryl received 3 years for conspiracy and fraud. As they led Rob away in handcuffs, he looked at me one last time. There was no remorse, only rage, but I felt nothing for him anymore. The brother I'd loved was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. Outside the courthouse, Mom squeezed my hand. "Can we go home now, Margaret?" "Yes, Mom. We can go home." 6 months later, I sit in Mom's kitchen, my kitchen now, as I've moved back permanently, watching her tend her roses through the window. She still has good days and bad days. Sometimes she forgets what year it is or asks when Dad is coming home. But she's clean, well-fed, and surrounded by love. Martha and Susan visit every Thursday for bridge. The neighbors stop by with casseroles. The house is filled with laughter again instead of fear. I think about the hundreds of elderly people who aren't as lucky as Mom, whose children or caregivers exploit them with no one to intervene. I've started volunteering at the senior center, teaching families how to recognize signs of elder abuse, how to protect their loved ones. Looking back, I realize that sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who hurt us deepest. But I also learned that it's never too late to fight back, never too late to demand justice, never too late to protect the ones we love. If you're listening to this and you suspect someone is being abused, elderly, disabled, anyone vulnerable, please don't stay silent. Make that call. Ask those questions. You might save a life. Mom is 84 now. She won't remember this story tomorrow, but I'll remember for both of us. And I'll keep telling it, so that maybe one more person will recognize the warning signs, one more family will be saved. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand up to your own blood and say, "No more." Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, please share your own experiences in the comments below. You never know who might need to hear that they're not alone. Subscribe to Crimson Vengeance for more true stories about standing up for family, fighting for justice, and never giving up on the people we love. Your story matters too.